believe, Bob, you have to pay attention to that particular point. Second, in the New Testament Gospels themselves, blame is squarely placed on the Jews for having crucified Jesus. It is true, the Gospels do not show that they had the authority to crucify Jesus, but nevertheless, the blame is squarely placed on them for having engineered it such that Pilate, the Roman governor, was refusing to crucify Jesus until the Jews who were enemies of Jesus at the time, or shall we say the Jewish enemies of Jesus at the time, so we're not speaking of all Jews, because his own followers were Jews themselves, and they are regarded by the Muslims as the Hawariyin, as people of great importance in the history of faith. Nevertheless, the Jewish opponents of Jesus at the time twisted the arm of Pilate. They threatened him. If you do not have Jesus killed, we will report the matter to Caesar. The matter for them was that Jesus was claiming to be a king, and in that case, he's a threat to Caesar. And if Pilate does not have him crucified, then the matter will be brought to the attention of of Caesar, in which case Pilate will be in trouble. And then Pilate reluctantly conceded to have Jesus crucified. This is why in Acts of the Apostles, one of the documents I mentioned as contained within the Christian New Testament, continues to blame the Jews for having crucified Jesus and speaks to them directly and says, "You have killed the author of life." So both the Jewish scriptures, the Babylonian Talmud, and the Christian scriptures confirm that the Jews killed Jesus. So why would that be impossible for the Jews to claim so, as the Quran mentioned? Notice that the Quran is not saying that as a matter of fact the Jews killed Jesus. The Quran is only saying that the Jews claimed that they have killed Jesus. Of course, the Quran disputes that claim and says, "Ma qataluhu wa ma salabuhu." They killed him not, nor did they crucify him. "Walakin shubbiha lahum." But so it was made to appear to them. You have the translation there before you. Now, Bob thinks that it would have been impossible for the Jews to have said that they killed Jesus and in the same breath to say that he is the Messiah. But notice that this is not a statement of fact. This is a statement of mockery. The Jews are not saying, "We believe that Jesus was the Messiah of God, and therefore we killed him." They're saying, "We don't believe he was the Messiah of God. We believe he was a false claimant to Messiahship, and our killing him proves that." So when they're saying Messiah here, they're saying Messiah in mockery. Now this is not unusual. This occurs in many passages of the Quran, where people say things by way of mockery. What are you to take, for example, of the statement in Surah Al-Dukhan, the 44th chapter of the Quran, where people are thrown into hell, and God tells them, "Okay, taste it now, the reward for your actions, you great people." So it doesn't mean that they are great people. It means that they claim to be great people. And in their claim to be great people, they disobeyed God, they disregarded his commandments, and now they're going to taste the rewards of that which they did, these supposedly great people. But it doesn't say in the Quran, "You supposedly great people." We're supposed to understand that. So when the Jews are saying, "We kill Jesus, the messenger of God, the Messiah," they don't mean that he is messenger of God and Messiah. They mean that he claimed these things and falsely claimed these things, and we proved the falsehood of what he claimed by killing him. Of course, the Quran defends him by saying that they didn't actually kill him, even though they thought that they did. Bob wants to know what would be gained by crucifying an innocent person as a substitution for Jesus. I do not hold to the theory that somebody else was crucified instead of Jesus. But I'm interested in Bob's take on this, because he thinks that if an innocent person was taken and crucified instead of Jesus, that would be injustice. And I agree with him. But would it not also be injustice if Jesus, the innocent person, was crucified on behalf of the guilty people of the world? I think the same principle applies. And I find some difficulty in understanding why Bob would see the injustice in the one and not the injustice in the other case. I do not defend the Gospel of Barnabas, because I have not done sufficient study on the history of the Gospel of Barnabas to be able to prove that it is an authentic document. But the fact that the Quran does not say that Judas was crucified instead of Jesus, I think is important. So in a different way, I agree with Bob in looking at the fact that the Gospel of Barnabas says that Jesus was crucified instead, and that the Quran does not say so. Well, what does the Quran specifically say? The Quran says that even though they thought that they had killed Jesus, they did not actually do so. Is there any corroboration for this in the Gospels themselves? Well, look at Luke chapter 13, verse 33. Jesus there says it is impossible for a prophet to be killed outside of Jerusalem. And the prophet that he was referring to is, according to commentators, himself. So if it is impossible for Jesus to be killed outside of Jerusalem, let us ask, where was the cross placed? The Gospel according to John shows that Jesus was led outside of the city to the hill of Calvary, and there he was crucified on Golgotha. So if Golgotha is outside of the city, and the cross was outside of the city, and it is impossible for Jesus to die outside of the city, well then, put the two and two together. It was impossible for Jesus to die on the cross. Very simple. But there are other corroborating facts as well, which perhaps I will deal with in the Q&A. In short, I am disappointed that Bob did not respond to my specific points, but of course I expect that he will have some response to be offered in the Q&A. Altogether, I have presented clear evidence that the Quran is the word of God for Muslims, and that the Quran, in claiming about Jesus what it claims, is presenting a human Jesus who might be believed in even by people who are not Muslims, and I suspect by many people who are in fact Christians, but who have difficulty with some of the supernatural claims regarding Jesus. If someone claims that a bird has flown past the window, we might believe him without requiring much evidence. But if someone claims that a pig has flown past the window, we would be asking for some evidence. The Quran is not claiming that a pig has flown past the window. The Quran is making some very ordinary claims regarding Jesus, and these might be believed without requiring great evidence. But even if one were to ask for evidence, the Quran is evidence of itself, that this is the word of God, a message from God to all humankind, and therefore its presentation of Jesus is dependable, is reliable, is authoritative, and believable. Thank you very much.
Can I actually just say no? Oh, what are you going to do?
I thought there was going to be a Q&A
Oh,
session.
okay.
If you wanted to respond.